Thank you for joining me. Welcome back, Chris. Thank you, Dr. Nelson, for joining us in this hour. The VP is in Wisconsin tonight. Did either of you have a chance to go to her rally? If not, what are you hearing from your friends and colleagues that maybe did attend the rally today? Chris, what are you hearing about that rally?
So it was packed. It was extremely packed. We saw today. So basically, today they were starting the beginning of a blitz across the state of Wisconsin. Vice President Harris spent the night here in Milwaukee this past evening, and she was here today doing some events on the campus at UW Milwaukee. That's where she was able to deliver her statement today on the Israeli military activities, and she has gone across the state to La Crosse, Wisconsin now, which they did a massive rally. Over almost 3,000 people were there at this one rally in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And from there, she's in going to Green Bay, and she's in Green Bay, Wisconsin right now. And, Green Bay is title town. We win championships, and we have big victories up there. So the fact that she's there to celebrate this at the end of the campaign season, it's a good sign. Because if we're campaigning in Green Bay and we're not campaigning in Madison, we're doing really good. So she's out there. We're visiting Wisconsin. We're all over Wisconsin. President Obama and Governor Walz will actually be in Madison coming soon. President Clinton may possibly be making a stop. Everybody's in town.
Everybody's coming to Wisconsin. Well, the pundits say it is Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania that are going to be the key states, and then that one electoral college vote from Omaha, Nebraska, that will be, the winning ticket for Vice President Harris and Tim Walz. Dr. Nelson, what are you feeling when you go out? You work with an organization focused on women. Now we know the issue of reproductive freedom, reproductive rights is a motivator for a lot of female voters. How is that issue resonating with voters in Wisconsin?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. And yes, I am the VP of the board there, so I don't necessarily work with them. However, what I'm hearing, even as the VP of the board, is that individuals are really excited about Kamala being a woman, of course, being a Black leaning woman, a Black facing woman, an individual who is known as a person of color. With that, what we know is that there's a lot of movement around the excitement. She's been here a number of times. I know that she's held at least 2 rallies here in the state, and it has been a lot of excitement around those components. And so what we found is individuals are really excited. They're really excited about the potential of her pushing things that are important to women, important to women's rights and women's freedom. And so we are really excited about the momentum that is being developed around not just her as a candidate, but her as well as the things that she is looking to introduce as the next president of the United States.
So, Chris, a couple of articles have focused on Black voters in particular and Black voters in Milwaukee, because we know if she wins the state of Wisconsin, it will be because of the huge turnout anticipated in Milwaukee. And this recent article in the New York Times, they were interviewing Black voters, talked to a man who said he wasn't voting for Harris. He said he had more money in his pocket. We hear that a lot. He said he had more money in his pocket under Trump. He hearkened back to the check that he got during the pandemic. He talked about the high prices of groceries, said he didn't have that problem when Trump was in office. He then went on to say that he worried that Vladimir Putin and China's Jinping would not treat Harris as an equal, and that she would not be able to, represent the United States on the international level. Because these male leaders would not respect her. Now, he then went on to say that he didn't have a problem with women and women could be leaders, but clearly that statement suggests there's some misogyny there. But there are people who feel that way. We hear this trope about money so much that the economy was better under Trump, which at the beginning of his term it was, but that was 75 months of positive growth from Obama. But he gets credit for that. And this notion that people had more money in their pocket. What are you saying to those voters that constantly bring that up?
Well, you just tell them the truth. simple fact is right now, especially with black voters, even in Milwaukee, more black people are employed today in Milwaukee, Wisconsin than ever before. The black unemployment rate is lower now than it's ever been in recorded history. The fact of the matter is things are going a lot better than they were. Yes, they can be better. And that's what Vice President Harris wants to do. That's why she has her proposal laid out where she wants to build an opportunity economy, actually putting small business loans out there, helping people get those small business loans out there that are worth more than $5,000 to start a small business, actually pushing real abilities to bring down housing costs. The fact that she wants to build 3 million new houses, that's going to be jobs to build those houses too. You have to build those houses, you have to build things that are going to go in those houses. Those are more jobs being created. The fact that Vice President Harris and even with President Biden, their administration has created 16 million new jobs in this country. And that is a fact. These are things you can go back to. And yes, if you want to look at all the years, President Trump always wants to say, "Oh, let's let's go back 4 years. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" Well, 4 years ago, he was telling us to inject bleach. 4 years ago, he was telling people, COVID isn't real. Things will be fine. Just keep going by today. We were losing hundreds of thousands of people in this country 4 years ago. So yeah, let's go back 4 years ago and talk about that. When the unemployment rate was at an all-time high, when people were dying, people are literally dying, where we're having the riots that he speaks of all the time, they were happening fighting back against him. So if he wants to roll the tape back, we're glad to roll the tape back because there's not a lot of good footage on his end. But what we're looking forward to, we're not going back to that. We're looking for a new way forward, and we're going to have Vice President Harris taking us there.
Dr. Nelson, the other thing that's quoted in this article by one of the voters is this concern about voting for someone that is a former prosecutor. We hear this often. We heard it a lot when Kamala Harris ran for president herself, that she locked up Black men when she was a prosecutor in San Francisco. Some say on low-level charges. There's some internet stories that are circulating from where a Black woman says that Kamala Harris ruined her life when she was arrested and charged with some crime in San Francisco. So there is this effort to tie her in a negative way to her background as a prosecutor. And we know the kind of fraught and tense relationship Black communities have with prosecutors and law enforcement. So how are you addressing, or what do you think the best way to address those concerns of voters are?
I think the best way is to simply be honest with voters. The way that I've been addressing it and the way that I've been communicating to voters is to simply say, listen, individuals whom actually created or committed certain offenses, they went before the court. They went before a judge. Kamala was not the individual who, she may have prosecuted them, but she was not the person who sentenced them, first of all. Secondarily, I would be leery of any prosecutor whom does not actually have some form of history where they're successful in prosecuting those who did wrong and who did harm. I would also be very leery about being willing to leverage someone's history against them. And I know some people are like, well, she's running for the president of the United States. But we all are individuals that we have done things within our past where in that moment it made sense to do and it was the right thing to do and things of that nature. And what I've been doing is just having a real conversation with individuals and bringing them back to the reality of, if an individual breaks into your home and they have to go before a judge, do you want someone who's going to look and say, oh, we're going to give you a pat on the back? Or do you want someone who's going to take that situation, monitor the situation, do the research on that situation, and then prosecute or that individual and allow the judge or those whom are, if they go to trial, allow those who are part of the jury to actually sentence them? If an individual does a crime in America, this is the standard of America, and it works whenever we are the ones that have been violated. And so when we're the ones who have not been violated, or when we are the violator, we have to be willing to allow the justice system to do what it was designed to do. Is it fair all the time? Absolutely not. However, when you have an individual who is hired to prosecute or to find the truth within a matter, if they find that truth, and as a result of that, an individual is prosecuted, that's where I take people to, is just the reality of what this balance of the justice system really is.
And it's pretty clear, Chris, Howard poll out today that 84% of Black voters in swing states, Wisconsin being one of them, are going to vote for Harris. This poll says that the Trump vote is 8%. And again, depending on which poll you read, which day you read it, which newspaper it's printed in, those numbers for Black voters for Trump are anywhere between 8 and 20%. What were the numbers in Wisconsin, Black voters for Trump in 2016 and 2020?
So in 2020, it was maybe between 7 and 10%, maybe, of Black voters that went for Trump. But, and then going off of the question you actually just asked, the reality of the basis is with her prosecutorial record, when she was a DA and when she was Attorney General, crime went down 10% in California and in San Francisco. When Donald Trump was president, we saw crime skyrocket, not just with the things that he was doing. So,
well, I think, Chris, the concerns of this voter in this article wasn't about crime. It was about the sense that she was prosecuting disproportionately Black men, or we've heard the trope that she sent, all these Black men in San Francisco to jail for nonviolent crimes. At the time in the state of California, she was a prosecutor. We had the 3 strikes law. Marijuana wasn't legal in the state of California. So, I'll tell you the answer. And the question is that, people confuse our branches of government. And at the time, if you were a prosecutor in California, the law was the law. You were, elected to prosecute those that broke the law. And people tend to forget that prosecutors don't make the law. It's the state legislature. So, we've now amended our 3 strikes law. But, that gets a little complicated and nuanced for people. So, what are you saying to those folks about her prosecutorial background and how, again, for Black families and many who have been just as involved, there's a negative feeling towards prosecutors in some cases?
And rightfully so, and understandably so. At the same time, we have to have somebody who's going to do their job. That's the job she was elected to do, and that was the job she put, her job was to prosecute people who committed crimes. What we're looking at is a situation where, a lot of people try to make it so that the Black community is anti-police. The Black community is not anti-police. The Black community is anti-being abused by the police. We're not asking for anything special. We're asked to be treated the exact same way that anybody else is treated. And that's exactly what she did. Now, one thing that we also can look at is the fact that she put programs in place that would actually end recidivism, make it easier for people to avoid prison time. The Back on Track program, for example. What they're trying to talk out of both sides of their mouth, and I could say something else, but we're on radio right now. They're trying to talk about, she's a prosecutor, she's locking up Black people, but then we're going to put up a felon and a criminal, an organized criminal who's been convicted of felonies, who's been accused and convicted of being a sexual predator as the Republican nominee. So what we need to really focus the conversation in on is what the real issues are. We have somebody here who has actually made a career out of fighting for the people, making sure the people are okay, and actually pushing back against those who like to do harm, those who want to scam, those who want to steal and swindle, those who want to sexually assault people. And in this instance, in this case, we have Kamala Harris or we have Donald Trump. And so that's what I make the point very clear. This is not a situation of she's locking up people unfairly. This is a situation where we have a prosecutor prosecuting a case against a known convicted felon and a sexual abuser. We need to make sure we're picking the right person in this.
Yeah, and Vivi Harris, I think, to her credit, and I'm glad she's doing this, she's leaning into her experience as a prosecutor to talk about prosecuting, cartel leaders and those that are, sex trafficking girls across the border and those, high level, theft rings and criminal syndicates. So there's nothing for her to be ashamed about. And Black folks, we fought hard. I remind people, look, I'm a lawyer. I remember, the fight that we have in this country to diversify the legal community. And that means lawyers in every aspect of our judicial system. And today, there are only 4 or 5% of all lawyers in this country are African American. You cut that in half, that's, probably 2 or 3% are women. So few female district attorneys in any large counties across this country. So she was a pioneer, opened the door for other Black people. And in your criminal justice system, and not all, skin folks or kin folks, but we know diversity matters and we know representation matters. and to have people of color in those jobs, whether they're judges or prosecutors or defense attorneys or wherever they are in the legal system, they are important to have. There's a lot of education to be done. I've met a lot of voters over the last week in Arizona and Nevada, and I'm still shocked at how much some voters don't know about the two candidates and the stark differences between them. Everyone's out on the campaign trail. You guys talked about Barack Obama, Tim Walz, of course, the candidate herself, VP Harris. Lots of folks are going to be coming to the battleground states. Barack Obama has already been out on the campaign trail, Chris, creating some controversy, though, with statements he made on social media, in particular, some Black men feeling like he was talking down to them, being disrespectful to them. He told some voters in Pittsburgh that we have not yet seen the same kind of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running, appearing to suggest that sexism lay behind the apprehension to support the vice president. He says it seems to be more pronounced with the brothers. And he went on to talk about, the obligation that Black men had. And a lot of folks took issue with Barack Obama. And some folks are saying he's hurting her on the campaign trail. What do you make of his statements in Pittsburgh? And what do you think he needs to say differently, if anything?
I went to college in Mississippi. At Mississippi State University, and one thing I learned down south is you get a good turn of phrase, and a hit dog will holler. Now, I don't feel like Barack Obama is talking about me. I've already voted, and I already voted for Vice President Harris. At the same time, I already know that there is a bit of misogyny in a lot of these. I don't believe she will be treated fairly on a world stage when she's been vice president for the last 4 years. She's met with hundreds of leaders already, kings and people all over the world, but she's certainly not going to be treated equally because she's the president of the United States. Get out of here with that. There are a lot of people who just literally do not want to get past the point that Kamala is a woman, and I don't see the problem here. I've grown up where I've grown up, and the people I've been around in my life, I've been very lucky to see very strong women in leadership roles who have been Black women, and the problem is not them being in leadership. The problem is them not being in leadership, not being able to have their voices heard, and not being able to lead this country the way everybody should have the right to. I don't think it's fair that women, we've gone almost 250 years and a woman has not been president of the United States. I think it's time we change that.
I hear you, Chris, and I first of all, thank you for voting, and thank you for all the great work you've done to help me plan my visit to Milwaukee. I'm looking forward to spending some time there on the ground with voters. But Dr. Nelson, apparently there are a lot of Black men who have what I'm going to call fragile egos. And I don't know, we need them to vote. So more bees with honey. What do you think of Barack Obama's, approach that some folks say is condescending? They compared it to the pound cake speech that he became famous for. You talk to a lot of voters, male voters. Do you think his approach works?
I do talk to a lot of voters. I also have a son, 2 of them, right? And both of them are voting age. And so what I have also done, I haven't necessarily said exactly what former President Obama has stated, but I have encouraged them to vote and to vote particularly for Kamala. I've encouraged them to vote that way. And I feel like him making that statement is his truth. We all have our truth. It is a component of the truth. There are individuals who, particularly maybe men, that may have an ego, right? They may feel like, well, you're telling us, you're comparing, things of that nature. It still doesn't negate the fact that we have individuals who do not like the reality that she's a woman. Women have been able to lead in every area of this nation. We've been able to lead in every area of society. And so I agree with even what Chris has stated. Like, at this point, do we really feel like that a woman cannot lead
let me stop you for a second. So you guys, I don't think you both agree with what he said. I guess my question is a little different. I'm asking, we're down to the wire, 20 days, 19 days, where all voters count. And I agree with Barack Obama when he says it's not the same 2008 energy in these streets. I've been in the streets in the battleground states of Nevada and Arizona. It's not. I can tell people unequivocally, you do not have that same Obama energy. And there are lots of reasons that we can point to for that. So if you're trying to get 08 turnout, the question is this the way to encourage these men who may be sexist, may have these preconceived notions about what women can or cannot do? We don't really care what they believe. We just need them to vote. So my question is this the way to get them to vote?
I think the way to get them to vote is to energize them. The thing about 2008 that's different than today is that people were energized. People had hope. They had an idea. And so I think the best way to get folks to actually turn out is to meet them where they are and to energize them, to listen to what it is that they feel like are issues.
That's what I'm asking you. Is it energizing them to talk to them and say, I got some problems with the brothers?
I don't know that that's the way. I don't know that would energize them. As we can see, it hasn't energized them, right? So thank you for that. I don't know that it has energized them. I do believe that sometimes we have to be willing to press a little bit, and I think that was his way of pressing. Did it offend some? Yes, but I don't know that it would energize them. I don't see anything wrong with it. I am a woman. I don't know that my son, who is more engaged, saw anything wrong with it. And so I think the best way is to meet them where they are and give them hope. That, in my opinion, is the difference between today and when he initially ran. He gave them hope.
Well, okay, Chris, you're a Black man, so you can talk about what will energize Black men. But Dr. Nelson just said Obama gave them hope. Kamala Harris is giving all kinds of money, loans, programs. Isn't that hope?
I would think it should be, but one thing about politics, it is never about a rational thought process. It is what I feel right now. It's the vibes. And we're looking at a situation right now. And me personally, I think the best way to combat this problem is by going directly at it. We are at a situation right now when we have the sitting vice president of the United States, a woman who has made it very clear where she stands, what she wants to do, and how she can get it done, and has that ability to get it done. And we are looking at her opponent, who literally wants to shred the Constitution, who literally wants to release the military on the American people when we're standing up for our rights. We're literally looking at her opponent, who is saying what he wants to do, accusing Haitians of eating cats and dogs, accusing people of saying that they're sending murderers and criminals into the United States who are immigrants. The only time he doesn't have a problem with an immigrant is when he's marrying one. So we need to make sure we're making it very clear where we stand here. And yes, Black women are the backbone of the Democratic Party. We need to make sure we are standing there in the backbone of a Black family. We need to make sure we're standing there proudly and strongly, unequivocally, for every Black woman that is literally going out there and putting her voice out there and saying, I want a chance to make this country a better place. And at this moment, that's Kamala Harris, and I'm going to do everything I can to push her, and I'm going to do everything I can to push back against people who want to attack her for just being a woman, because it's unfair and this is just unacceptable. So I think it's a two-pronged attack. We need to push back when they come at with these misogynistic attacks, but we also need to encourage them to come out there and vote, because it's so important. Every single vote that's cast.
No, you're right. Every vote is important, which is why I'm trying to get at how do we motivate folks to make sure we get every vote. And to be fair, there were a lot of folks who supported what Barack Obama said. He said, look, he's in a unique position as a Black man, former president, to talk directly to Black men and to be very honest with them, and to, as you said, Dr. Nelson, press. So there are people who felt, had different feelings about it. Mark Morial, who's the president and CEO of the National Urban League, he said that young Black men had not felt represented by the issues that have dominated the 2024 Democratic campaign, with its focus on women's reproductive rights, immigration, and the taxation of the Americans' billionaire class. It's understandable that they don't feel the same sense of urgency as other constituencies. So Obama's message to Black men was necessary and appropriate. All right, Chris, Mark Morial says that young brothers didn't feel like they saw themselves in this election because he framed it as women's reproductive rights, immigration, and the taxation of Americans' billionaire class. So first of all, let's be clear. It's not women's reproductive rights. It's healthcare. that's on the ballot. And I think that's dangerous when we start talking about these issues as if they have a gender. Like, reproductive health and women's health is men's health as well. You got a mama, you got a sister, you got a daughter. So it shouldn't be an issue that only women care about, and immigration is gender neutral. So do you agree that somehow Black men weren't, I don't know, represented in the conversations that were happening, leading up to where we are in this election?
I don't think I know I was involved in it because I'm literally seeing my sisters, my cousins, they're losing their rights. And if they're losing their rights, my rights are definitely next. That's a problem for me. As a Black man, as a Black gay man, I understand how important my rights are and how easily they can be taken or given. Because until 2015, I had more right to marry my cousin in the state of Wisconsin than I had the right to marry the man I love. So that's unacceptable. We're not going to stand for that. I don't agree with what he said, and I think that in regards to reproductive rights, it takes a man and a woman to need these reproductive rights. We're not reproducing by ourselves here, and this is a situation of we literally have women dying in hospitals in need of care. We just saw the situation happen in Georgia. That's not a woman's right. That's not a man's right. That's a us problem. We have to fix that problem. Same thing with immigration. We've had the ability to fix these issues around immigration many, many times if we had a partner in the Republican Party willing to work to get this fixed so that we're all getting jobs and equity. The fact that we, taxation, they're Black billionaires. They're Black men billionaires. So I'm sure there is a conversation to be had that Black men would want to be hearing about this. So no, I don't agree with what he said and the reasons he said it. And I think we have a lot of examples of why that's just not the case.
And I guess, Dr. Nelson, the issue I'm having with all of this is somehow, did you recall getting a memo that now women are equal and have as many rights as men? I know everywhere I go, look at every CEO, every, corporate board, every corporate everything. Last I checked, it's still dominated by men. So when did men lose any of these rights that they're whining about having lost? Because women, we're still fighting for equal pay. We're still fighting for parity in the workplace. So this is kind of a ridiculous argument on one hand. It can really make you angry because when did men lose any rights?
I agree 100%. And a lot of times I think to myself, like, did people forget that they got here through a woman? There's such an attack on women. There's such an attack on the things and the issues that are important to women. And I often say this, I wake up as a Black woman every day and I show up as a Black woman every day. And so as a result of that, there are certain things that as Black women that we are fighting, not just within our own community, we're fighting within communities that don't necessarily look like us. We're fighting to actually be leaders and to stand in those places as leaders and to really be those who can stand in our greatness and not have to apologize for it. So when I think about some of these things that we're fighting against, it infuriates me to know that these are not just things that we're fighting against with other cultures and things of that nature. We're having these internal fights. And when I think about the power of a woman, I think about the influence of a woman, the ability to impact this nation in a real way. Women, I often say this, men think black and white, women think gray. And so when I think about that, we are looking at the full picture, whereas men, in a lot of ways, and I'm not trying to be sexist, I'm just thinking about in a lot of ways, my engagement with men, many of them are either black or white. It's go or no. And with women, a lot of times we have the ability and the capacity to think holistically. So having an individual who is a woman in this space, it doesn't just impact us, it impacts everyone around us. We can think and we can look and be able to monitor basically some of the happenings that are impacting individuals across this nation, and not simply those whom we think are at the forefront.
Yeah, let's not forget, this is a patriarchal society. In the Catholic Church, you can't even be a priest or have a position of authority if you are female. There are many institutions where women were just allowed to participate, whether you're a firefighter or police officers. I mean, it's not long ago, people, that women were relegated to, working in the home. We couldn't even hold certain positions. So this notion that now the whole world is focused on women issues, that's just not true. that's just a falsehood, and it's creating this false narrative that I think is more divisive than it is helpful. And the reality is, Black men, second to Black women, are the most reliable voting bloc for Democrats. You start with Black women. We are the most reliable. We vote, overwhelmingly Democratic, and then Black men come in second. So I'm not even sure this whole notion that Black men were defecting to Donald Trump, or there's going to be some 20%, a Black male vote going to Donald Trump. We hear that every election cycle, and historically, the Black vote, as you said, Chris, in Wisconsin, the last couple of elections, ends up being somewhere between 7 to 10, 8 to 12% max. And there's no indication that it's going to be any different in this election. And yes, if there can be loans targeted to any group that has been marginalized, not just men, and as a lawyer, I can tell you, we know any of these programs that try to, based on just race or gender, are not likely to pass muster with the Constitution and the Supreme Court anyhow. So, we should be talking about entrepreneurs broadly, and marginalized people, and lifting people up, whether you're a man or a woman, out of poverty, making sure people have good living wage jobs, access to housing, access to education, because that's how our communities grow, and that's how families grow, and that's how we're going to build wealth in our Black communities, men and women doing it together. So I hope that men, feel heard and seen, because they are heard and seen. You walk in any, like I said, company, any organization, go to the top, look at the top of the org chart, and you will still see men are, dominant in almost every institution in this country. We are out of time. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Nelson. Pleasure to have you on. Thank you, Chris, again, for all your great work. Again, I will be in the great state of Wisconsin on Monday, October 21st, talking to voters, doing an event at the Rise and Grind Cafe. You can go to my website, arevamartin.com, to register, to join us, be a part of this conversation. I want to talk to those voters who feel like they don't have enough information, or feel like they're not sure. They don't know if they want to vote. Those are the voters that I've been tasked to meet with, talk to, and engage with, because every vote in this election is going to count. It's going to be close. That's what the pundits are telling us. In close elections, we need record turnout, particularly in our battleground states. And I'm fired up and ready to go, Chris. I think we can do this. And I think Milwaukee and Wisconsin is going to do this for the Harris Walz team.
Absolutely.